In this short presentation, we're going to be looking at good academic practice and what we mean by that and how that relates to plagiarism. You might assume that by the time everyone gets to university, they know how to avoid plagiarism, but sadly there are cases of academic misconduct every year. And so it's really important just to get to grips with it at this particular level, whether you're undergraduate, master's student or PhD student, so that you have the tools so that you can write really confidently and not be concerned about committing plagiarism. Now, there's lots more information available to you. We'd always recommend that you look at your departmental guidelines on this and at the university's plagiarism and academic misconduct web pages. They will be the authority on this. So I think it really helps to have a definition of plagiarism, and quite simply put, it's reusing other people's work and passing it off as your own. Or it's reusing your own work that you previously submitted and presenting it as new work, and that's something else you're not allowed to do. So that's one form of plagiarism, kind of copying, but the other form is collusion, and that's working together with somebody else when you're not meant to be, so not a team project, not working with others, but actually collaborating with somebody else to generate perhaps two halves of an argument, putting them together and both of you presenting them as if it's your own work, but you haven't actually given credit to that other person. Now, it applies to absolutely everything. You can plagiarize ideas, you can plagiarize written work, images, text, data, formula, coding, all sorts of things that you can pass off as your own. It's not just about writing. Now, it's quite often and quite easily spotted by academic staff. They will have read much more widely than you. They'll be incredibly familiar with the literature in your particular field, and they will know straight away if something belongs to somebody else. And often stylistically, it shouts out in an essay if there are words that aren't yours. You can tell quite quickly when someone has cut and pasted something from somebody else's style. But also there's software out there. So Turnitin is software used by the University of Cambridge. Lots and lots of departments use this and they submit all essays through that, and that software compares it to everything else in its database. So it looks at all other academic works out there and it can tell from source material, it can say this large chunk has been lifted straight out of this particular source, but also it compares it to other essays that have been submitted by other students. And so that's really important to remember for that point of collusion. And of course it compares it to your own previous submissions as well. So this is a form of academic behaviour called misconduct, and it breaches the rules of behaviour, something you all will have agreed to when joining the university. So that all seems rather negative. One way to look at it is the flip side of that, and what is good academic practice? So if plagiarism is bad academic practice, it's a form of misconduct, what is good academic practice? So this is what we do all the time. You know, we do build on the ideas, the data, the work of others. Constantly. We're not expecting people just to pluck new ideas out of thin air. When we formulate any sort of argument, it should always be built on the ideas of others. But what we have to do, rather than just copying it and putting it together like some form of jigsaw, is to critically engage with it at every stage. And if you've listened to our talks about note making and critical reading, this is something we really emphasize at every stage, that we don't just copy things down straight. We don't just take them as read. We're constantly questioning them, trying to connect up ideas. And this shows that you understand what you've read. Again, it's really important to use the ideas of others. You just have to build arguments out of it. You have to give credit, and this is a form of referencing. Every time you include somebody else's idea or argument, something that hasn't come from your own thinking. And there are different ways of doing this. You might directly cite somebody, but you might also kind of paraphrase or summarize an argument that they've made. And we'll look at that in a moment. But most importantly, you're trying to get your own ideas across, and that is good academic practice, developing your own confident academic writing voice. So why do we struggle? Why does plagiarism exist? If we all know this, that we should be using the work of others, but we should be doing it in a proper way, well, it's really difficult. Sometimes it's a struggle to make your own contribution. You feel like everybody else has written everything and you wonder what contribution you can make. As I said, we are expected to use the work of others, but to critically engage with them. And sometimes it's really difficult to kind of hear your own voice when you're reading other people's work all the time. So it's something that takes practice. And again, that's why you're here, to develop these skills. But it's not enough just to say, I found it really difficult, because it is unethical. It's something we really shouldn't do. It's poor scholarship. And ultimately, it may lead to some engagement with disciplinary procedures within your department, within your college, where you're called in to explain why you have submitted work that isn't your own. So it's taken really seriously, even if we understand that it's a challenge. So what are the skills that help us stop plagiarizing? Well, first of all, not being panicked, making sure we give ourselves time to prepare, to read, to develop that argument. So we've got lots of resources on time management, so have a look at those on our LibGuide. Secondly, make really clear notes. Make it clear when they're your ideas, and make it clear when they're ideas of others. And the best thing is not to ever write down what someone else has said, unless it's a really short citation we want to use. Constantly put stuff into your own words, not just summarising what they've said, but connecting it with the work of others, so you know there's no chance of just lifting something straight out of that. Then it's really important to reference things properly, and then finally to really understand what plagiarism is. So hopefully we've addressed some of that fourth point there straight away, and in another presentation we'll be looking at referencing. So just a reminder, here's some links to the Wolfson College LibGuide Time Management tab, making clear notes, but also to the Good Academic Practice LibGuide, which has some really good interactive exercises to help you understand plagiarism in a bit more detail. And then finally, link to the university's Plagiarism and Academic Misconduct website.